It's been a while, brother.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Liquid?
Not so young anymore, eh, Snake?
Following the breakout success that was Metal Gear Solid on the original PlayStation, Konami and Kojima quickly began work on a sequel. The turn of the century brought with it the dawn of a new generation, heralded by Sony's, at the time, groundbreaking console, the PlayStation 2. A markedly more powerful console with DVD technology opened new possibilities for developers, and Konami delivered once again with its 2001 release Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. With a shining Metacritic score of 96, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty is easily one of the highest rated games of all time, thanks to its, at the time, stellar visuals, highly dynamic gameplay, and memorable boss fights. But has a time period of more than 20 years been kind to this game? Let's find out. Sequels have always been a tough puzzle to crack. Does one change up the core elements of the first game to make the sequel markedly more different than the original? Or does one build upon what worked in the original? Or does one just give fans more of what they love with little in the name of change? Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question, and part of Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty's success lies in how it handles its approach to creating a sequel to a beloved classic. It's equal parts more of the same, and something that subverts general fan expectation. The biggest risk that Kojima took with Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty is definitely the surprise change-up of the protagonist. The iconic character of Solid Snake, as well as the iconic voice of David Hayter, had more than earned its fair share of respect in the hearts of many gamers during the course of Metal Gear Solid, and fans were hoping to return to the same shoes for the sequel. Series creator Hideo Kojima subverted fan expectations once again through misleading marketing and instead made gamers play as Raiden, a young and unproven rookie. Of course, Solid Snake is still there, but as more of a supporting character, except in the Tanker chapter where he is fully playable. Of course, this speaks volumes about the central plot theme of Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty: misinformation. You see, unlike the very simple yet layered plot of Metal Gear Solid, its sequel cranks all the narrative devices to 11 to explore the aforementioned theme of misinformation and how its rise in a digitized world affects our very own ideologies and thought processes. Metal Gear Solid 2 is divided into two parts: the previously mentioned Tinker chapter and a offshore environmental cleanup facility by the name of Big Shell. Raiden, the protagonist, is on a mission to neutralize a terrorist group who calls themselves Sons of Liberty and rescue the President of the United States. That's just the bare-bones structure, and things quickly start to take turns as secrets keep on changing the relationships between characters and the moral alignment of featured factions. The original design document for the game talks about twisting the narrative threads to such a degree that one cannot distinguish fiction from facts. While one could argue that these aspirations are overly ambitious, Kojima certainly came awfully close to hitting the mark. In a similar vein, characters featured in Metal Gear Solid 2 are markedly more complex than the original, and players will find themselves just as lost in the intricacies and moralities of their actions as Raiden, further deepening the connection with him. In addition to returning characters such as Solid Snake, Revolver Ocelot, and the Colonel, players get to meet new characters such as Rosemary, who all are endearing to witness during the course of this operation. Sons of Liberty features a very philosophical theme, but it's a perfect match for Kojima's style of expository-heavy storytelling nevertheless. The game also predicted how the rise of digitalization will lead to an information age, an era where one would control all the flow of information, which will become the most valuable asset in controlling a collective conscience of people. While many rejected these seemingly superfluous ideas during Metal Gear Solid 2's release, it all seems accurate today. Suffice to say, it's easily the strongest aspect of Metal Gear Solid 2, and it has aged well after all these years. Coming to the gameplay, Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty takes the strong foundations laid by the original and builds a more dynamic gameplay loop around it. Fun fact, part of the reason why Kojima wanted Raiden to be the protagonist for the sequel was also because explaining basic mission procedures to a hardened veteran like Solid Snake would be extremely redundant. Players could now use the standardized right analog stick on the PS2 to aim at specific weak points of enemies such as the head or legs to dispatch them efficiently. This also allowed players to look around the environment for interesting details or open up more tactical opportunities for dealing with enemies. For instance, players can shoot at gas pipes, which will cause steam to blow out, giving Raiden an opportunity to close the distance and dispatch them with CQC, or better yet, make a last-ditch escape from the enemy's line of sight. On the topic of enemies, Metal Gear Solid 2 also pioneered enemy AI with complex behavior trees, which allowed for a more tense stealth experience, and of course, more opportunities than before to exploit the system to one's own benefit. Unlike the first game, enemies will actually contact their squad mates in real time, and use their collective powers against the player to rat him out and take him down. They're more ruthless than before, and will check obvious hiding spots in search of Raiden, or call out armored strike teams to gain the advantage in numbers. As such, it's advisable to not go in guns blazing at all times, and instead, use your tools of tactical espionage to the fullest to make it out of the situation as unscathed as possible. In addition to hiding behind cover, players can walk slowly to avoid detection from guards, although this is heavily influenced by factors such as visibility and ambient sound levels in the surrounding environment. Furthermore, you can also use objects in the environment to distract enemies and make an opening for yourself to sneak through. Or you could hang down railings or hide in storage lockers to slip by undetected. Or you could break enemy comms gear to turn the tables in your favor. Basically, you get a lot more options than before to showcase your mastery of stealth mechanics. Do you wish to be a ghost who gets away unheard and unseen? Or do you wish to thin the herd one by one using your tools of tactical espionage in interesting ways? Much like the original, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty doesn't place any restrictions on your approach to combat, and you are free to express yourself in any way you want to. The level design also received a significant bump in complexity to incorporate the many new items players now have at their disposal. The Big Shell is a sprawling playground of possibilities with multiple levels of elevation, lookout points, and plenty of hiding spots. Players are encouraged to use the environment to their advantage to get out of tactical situations. As is customary with Hideo Kojima games, the environments are also filled with interesting little details that fans can gawk at for hours on end. For instance, ice cubes melt into water after a certain amount of time. Or how about seagulls pooping down on you from the high skies if you stare at them long enough in first-person mode? Sure, these details don't matter much to the general gameplay proceedings, but remain a joy to discover even all these years later. Then there are the boss fights, which are easily one of the more defining aspects of a Metal Gear Solid experience. Suffice to say, Metal Gear Solid 2 once again knocked it out of the park with its roster of iconic boss fights. From the frantic sequence of defusing bombs to beating Fat Man, to the duel against Solid Snake, to the encounter against the Harrier, there's no shortage of boss fights that players will remember well after the credits have rolled. Sure, many of these fights might not hold a candle to iconic fights like Psycho Mantis, but they aren't a slouch by any means either. Metal Gear Solid 2's visuals were easily the most impressive parts of the game at the time. One could even argue that Metal Gear Solid 2 was just as important of a game for the PlayStation 2 as it was for Konami or Kojima. The game's E3 2000 reveal is considered by many to be one of the most impressive gaming moments of all time, thanks in no small part to the realistic facial textures, serene weather effects, and so much more. In all honesty, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty was a benchmark title for the PlayStation 2, a game that truly showcased what Sony's DVD running machine was capable of. Of course, that doesn't change the fact that returning to this kind of presentation may be jarring for gamers accustomed to modern AAA visuals. In conclusion, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty was a game that was truly ahead of its time. Its postmodern narrative might have sounded superfluous and overly philosophical to the naysayers at the time, but remain as true as steel in the information age we live and breathe in. It takes the elaborate stage that Kojima founded with Metal Gear Solid in 1998 and cranks all of the directorial devices to 11, delivering a game with better dialogues, a cast of complex and double-crossing characters, Raiden's compelling character arc, and so much more. The addition of a proper first-person aiming mode and the added tools and opportunities of tactical espionage are a perfect match to the improved enemy AI, and as a result, sneaking past the many arenas of Big Shell remains a joy and an act of personal expression to this date. The boss fights might not be as memorable as the original, but they aren't a slouch by any means either. If we were to assign a score to Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty today, we would give it an excellent 9 out of 10. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request: we upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.